Chapter 9. Overtures to Achilles. While the Trojans thus kept watch, the Achaeans were shuddering in the grip of panic. Who treads on the heels of rout? All their captains knew the tortures of despair. Their hearts were storm-tossed, like the fish delighting sea when Boreas and Zephyr, the winds that blow from Thrace, pounce on it with alternate squalls, and the black rollers lift their crests and pile up seaweed all along the beach. Agamemnon, watching about distraught by his grief, told his clear-voiced heralds to summon every man by name to a meeting, but not to call out loud, and he played a leading part in the work himself. They sat down to the assembly in a sorry mood, and as Agamemnon rose to address them, he groaned heavily, and the tears ran down his face like water trickling from a spring in the dark streaks down a precipice. "My friends," he said, "captains and counselors of the Argives, Zeus, the great son of Cronos, has dealt me a crushing blow. The cruel god, who once assured me solemnly that I should bring down the walls of Ilium before I left this spot, has changed his mind, and now, to my bitter disappointment, bids me retreat to Argos in disgrace with half my army lost. It is clear that unconquerable Zeus, who has brought down the high towers of many a city, will destroy others yet, has decided thus in his omnipotence. So now let every man of you follow my lead. Aboard the ships, I say, and home to our own country. Troy with its broad streets will never fall to us." Agamemnon's outburst was received in complete silence by the Achaean soldiery. For a long time they sat in speechless dejection, but at last Diomedes of the loud war cry rose to his feet. "My lord Atreides," he began, "it is you first and foremost, you and this imbecility of yours, that I fall foul of. I do so in open debate, where, as your majesty knows, we are privileged, and you must not be offended. You took it on yourself the other day to reprimand me in front of the troops. You said I was a milksop and a coward. Every Argive, young and old, has heard the story. But has not Zeus in his wisdom withheld some gifts from you? He gave you the imperial scepter and the homage it brings with it. But he did not give you courage, and courage is the secret of power, sir. Do you really believe the Achaeans to be the cowards and recreants that your words imply? If you, for one, have set your heart on getting away, why not be off? The road is clear, and your ships are standing by the sea. The whole great fleet of them that brought you from Mycenae, but the rest of the long-haired Achaeans are going to stay till we sack Troy. No, they too can take to the ships like you and scuttle home. And we too, I and Sthenelus, will fight on till we reach our goal in Ilium. It is by heaven's will that we are here. The Achaeans were all delighted with Diomedes, tamer of horses. They shouted their approval, and now the charioteer Nestor rose to speak. Tydides, he said, you are a great man in a fight, and in debate you have no rival of your age. There is not one of us here who will cavil at your speech or gainsay a word of it. But you stopped too soon. The fact is that although you talk sense to the Argive kings and were quite right in saying what you did, you are still rather young. Indeed, you might have been my youngest son, and I, who am so much older than yourself, am left to explain the implications of your speech and work them out in detail. When I come to do so, I shall count on everyone's support, even King Agamemnon's, for that man is indeed an enemy of his country, clan and heart, who enjoys the bitter taste of civil war. But enough for the moment. Let us take our cue from the dark night and prepare for supper. Sentries must be posted at intervals along the trench outside the wall. That is the duty I leave to the younger men. After that, you, Achilles, as our overlord, must give us a lead. Invite the seniors to a banquet. It is a proper thing for you to do, and one that cannot hurt you. Day by day, Achaean ships bring wine to you over the seas from Thrace. Your huts are full of it, and as the king of this great people, it is for you to offer hospitality. When you have gathered us all under your roof, you must listen to the man who can give you the best advice. And God knows we Achaeans need the best and cleverest we can get, with all these enemy fires so close to the ships. Nobody finds them a pleasant sight. This very night will make or mar the expedition. Nestor's advice was well received and promptly followed. Armed sentries went out at the double under the command of Prince Thrymedes, Nestor's son. Ascalaphus and Ialmenus, children of the war god Meriones, Apharius and Dipyrus, and the noble Lycomedes, Creon's son. There were 7 captains of the guard, and 100 young men marched behind each, with long spears in their hands. They took their posts midway between the ditch and the wall, and there each party lit a fire, and everyone prepared his supper. Meanwhile, Atreides led the whole party of senior commanders to his hut, and had a savory meal served up for them. They helped themselves to the good things spread before them, and when all had satisfied their hunger and thirst, the old man Nestor took the floor and expounded his idea. He had their interest at heart, and this was not the only time his wisdom won the day. Your Majesty, Agamemnon, son of Atreus, king of men, he said. With you my speech begins, and it will end with you. You are king of a great people, for whose wise governance Zeus put the scepter in your hands and entrusted you with the laws. So it behooves you, above all, both to give and listen to advice, and not only that, but to carry out the suggestions that others may feel bound to put forward in your interest. In any case, you will get the credit for whatever moves originate with them. And now I will tell you what I think is best, in the confidence that nobody will hit on a better remedy than mine. I long ago made up my mind, and I have not altered it. In fact, your majesty, not since the moment when you infuriated Achilles by taking the lady Breas from his hut. We were all against it, and I, for one, did my utmost to dissuade you. But your arrogant temper got the better of you, and you degraded a man of the highest distinction, whom the gods themselves esteem, by confiscating his prize to your own profit. Which brings me to my point. Even at this late hour, let us take steps to approach and placate him with peace offerings and a humble apology. My venerable lord, replied Agamemnon, king of men, the account of my blind folly that you have given us is wholly true. Blinded I was, I do not deny it myself. The man whom Zeus has taken to his heart and honors as he does Achilles, to the point of crushing the Achaeans for his sake, is worth an army. But since I did give in to a lamentable impulse and commit this act of folly, I am willing to go back on it and propitiate him with a handsome indemnity. Before you all I will enumerate the splendid gifts I offer: 7 tripods, untarnished by the flames, 10 talents of gold, 20 cauldrons of gleaming copper, and 12 powerful prize-winning race horses. Why, with nothing more than the prizes they have won for me, a man would not be badly off or short of precious gold. In addition, I will give him 7 women, skilled in the fine crafts, lesbians whom I choose for their exceptional beauty, as my part of the spoils when he captured the city of Lesbos. These he shall have from me, and with them the women I took from him, the daughter of Briseis. Moreover, I shall give him my solemn oath that I have never been in bed with her and slept with her as a man does with a woman. All these gifts shall be put in his hands at once. Later, if the gods permit us to sack the city of Priam, let him come in with us when we are sharing out the spoils, load his ship with gold and bronze to his heart's content, and pick out 20 Trojan women for himself, the loveliest he can find after Argive Helen. And if in due course we get back to Achaean Argos, the richest of all lands, he can become my son-in-law, and I will treat him as I do Orestes, my own beloved son, who is being brought up there in the lap of luxury. I have 3 daughters in my palace, Chrysothemis, Laodice, and Iphinesa. Of these he shall choose of his own whichever he likes best, and take her to Peleus' house without making the usual gifts. Indeed, I will pay him a dowry, a generous one, bigger than anyone has ever given with his daughter. Not only that, but I will give him 7 fine towns, Cardamile, Enop, and grassy Hyre, holy Phere, and Anthea with its deep meadows, beautiful Apia, and Pedasus rich in vines. They are all near the sea, in the farthest part of sandy Pylos. Their citizens are rich in flocks and cattle. They would do homage and pay tribute to him as though he were a god, acknowledging his scepter and prospering under his paternal sway. All this I will do for him if he relents. Let him surrender. Why do we loathe Hades more than any god, if not because he is so adamantine and unyielding? Yes, let him submit himself to me, who am his senior by so much, both as man and as a king. Your Majesty, Agamemnon, son of Atreus, king of men, replied Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer. Nobody can say that your present offer to Prince Achilles is not generous. Very well then. Let us send a deputation with all speed to the hut of Peleus' son. I am ready to nominate the men myself, and they must not refuse the duty. First of all, the venerable Phoenix, he can go in advance, and after him the great Aias and the noble Odysseus. Of the heralds, Odius and Arabates are the men to go with them. But first, let someone fetch water for our hands and call for silence, so that we may pray to Zeus, the son of Cronos, and implore his grace. Everyone was satisfied with Nestor's arrangements. Heralds hastened to pour water over their hands, while their squires filled the mixing bowls to the brim with drink, and after pouring a little first in each man's cup, served them all with wine. When they had made their libations and drunk as much as they wished, the envoys set out from the hut of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, after Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, had given them full instructions, glancing from one man to another as he exhorted them to do their utmost to placate the peerless Achilles, but with his eyes, for the most part, on Odysseus. Aias and Odysseus walked together along the shore of the sounding sea, with many a prayer to the great sea god who girdles the world, that the task of softening the proud heart of Achilles might not prove too hard. When they came to the Myrmidons' hut and ships, they found the prince beguiling the time with music. He was singing of famous men and accompanying himself with a tuneful lyre, a beautifully ornamented instrument with a silver crossbar, which he had chosen from the spoils when he destroyed Eetion's city. He was alone but for Patroclus, who was sitting opposite with his eyes on Achilles, quietly waiting for him to stop singing. The two envoys drew near, the noble Odysseus leading, and halted in front of the prince, surprised. Achilles sprang to his feet with the lyre in his hand and came forward from the chair in which he had been singing. Patroclus too got up when he saw the men, and with a gesture of greeting, Achilles, the great runner, said, "Welcome to the two dear friends. It was time that someone came, and angry as I am, there are no two Achaeans whom I love more than you." With this, the noble Achilles led them into his hut and seated them on chairs with purple coverings. Then he turned quickly to Patroclus, who was standing by, and said, "Bring out a bigger bowl. My lord Patroclus, put less water in the wine, and give every man a cup. Here are my dearest friends under my own roof." Patroclus carried out his comrade's orders. He put down a big bench in the firelight and laid it on the backs of a sheep and a fat goat and the chine of a great hog rich in lard. Automedon held these for him, while Achilles joined them, and then carved up the joints and spitted the slices. Meanwhile Patroclus, the royal son of Menoetius, made the fire blaze up. When it had burnt down again, and the flames had disappeared, he scattered the embers and laid the spits above them, resting them on dogs, after he had sprinkled the meat with holy salt. When he had roasted it and heaped it up on platters, Patroclus fetched some bread and set it out on the table in handsome baskets, and Achilles divided the meat into portions. This done, he took a chair by the wall opposite King Odysseus and told his friend Patroclus to sacrifice to the gods. Patroclus threw the ritual pieces on the fire, and they all helped themselves to the good things spread before them. When their thirst and hunger were satisfied, Aias nodded to Phoenix. But Odysseus caught the signal, and having filled his cup with wine, drank to Achilles and said, "Your health, Achilles. With all these appetizing dishes to dispose of, we cannot complain of our rations, either in my lord Agamemnon's hut or here again in yours. But at the moment, the pleasures of the table are far from our thoughts. We are confronted by a disaster, your highness, the magnitude of which appalls us. Unless you rouse yourself to fight, we have no more than an even chance of saving our gallant ships or seeing them destroyed. The insolent Trojans and their famous allies are bivouacking close to the ships and wall. Their camp is bright with fires. They are convinced that there is nothing left to stop them now from swooping down on our black ships. Zeus, the son of Cronos, has encouraged them with lighting flashes and lightning on the right. Hector has run amok, triumphant and all-powerful. He trusts in Zeus and fears neither man nor God in the frenzy that possesses him. His one prayer is for the early coming of the gracious dawn, for he is itching to hack the peaks from the sterns of our ships, to send us up the ships themselves in flames, to smoke us out and to slaughter us by the hulls. And indeed, I am terribly afraid that the gods may let him carry out these threats, and it may be our fate to perish here, far from Argos, where the horses graze. Up with you then, If even at this late hour you want to rescue the exhausted troops from the Trojans' fury, if you refuse, you yourself will regret it later, for when the damage has been done, there will be no mending it. Bestir yourself before that stage is reached to save the Danaans from catastrophe. My good friend, when your father Peleus sent you from Phthia to join Agamemnon, did he not admonish you in these words? My son, Athena and Hera, if they wish you well, are you going to make you strong? What you must do is to keep a check on that proud spirit of yours, for a kind heart is a better thing than pride. Quarrels are deadly. Be reconciled at once, and all the Argives, young and old, will look up to you the more. Those were the old man's precepts, which you have forgotten. Yet even so, it is not too late for you to yield. Give up this bitter animosity. Agamemnon is ready to make you ample compensation the moment you relent. If you will listen, I will enumerate the gifts he destined for you in his hut. 7 tripods, untarnished by the flames, 10 talents of gold, 20 cauldrons of gleaming copper, and 12 powerful prize-winning horses. He said that with nothing more than the prizes they had won for him, a man would not be badly off or short of precious gold. In addition, he will give you 7 women skilled in the fine crafts, lesbians whom he chose for their exceptional beauty as his part of the spoils when you yourself captured the city of Lesbos. These you shall have from him, and with them the women he took from you, the daughter Briseis. Moreover, he will give you his solemn oath that he has never been in her bed and slept with her as a man does, your highness, with a woman. All these gifts shall be put in your hands at once. Later, if the gods permit us to sack the city of Priam, you must come in with us when we are sharing out the spoils. Load your ship with gold and bronze to your heart's content, and pick out 20 Trojan women for yourself, the loveliest you can find after Argive Helen. And if in due course we get back to Achaean Argos, the richest of all lands, you can become his son-in-law. He will treat you as he does Orestes, his own beloved son, who is being brought up there in the lap of luxury. He has 3 daughters in his palace, Chrysothemis, Laodice, and Iphiasa. Of these you shall choose your own, whichever you like best, and take her to Peleus' house without making the usual gifts. In fact, he will pay you a dowry, a generous one, bigger than anyone has ever given with his daughter. Not only that, but he will give you 7 fine towns: Cardamile, Enop, and Grassy Hire, Holypherae, and Anthea with its deep meadows, beautiful Appia, and Pedasus, rich in vines. They are all near the sea, in the farthest part of sandy Pylos. Their citizens are rich in flocks and cattle. They would do homage and pay tribute to you as you were a god. acknowledging your scepter and prospering under your paternal sway. All this he will do for you if you relent. But if your hatred of Achilles, gifts and all outweighs every other consideration, do have some pity on the rest of the united Achaeans, lying dead beat in their camp. They will honor you like a god. Indeed, you could cover yourself with glory in their eyes, for now is the time when you could get Hector himself. He fancies that he has no match among all the Danaans whom the ships brought here, and he may even venture near you in his insensate fury. Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus of the nimble wits, replied Achilles, the great runner, to save you from sitting there and taking it in turns to coax me, I had better tell you point blank how I feel and what I am going to do. I loathe like hell's gates the man who thinks one thing and says another. So here I give you my decision. You can take it that neither my lord Agamemnon nor the rest of the Danaans are going to win me over, since it appears that a man gets no thanks for struggling with the enemy day in, day out. His share is the same whether he sits at home or fights his best. Cowards and brave men are equally respected, and death comes alike to one who has done nothing and one who has toiled hard. All I have suffered by constantly risking my life in battle has left me no better than the rest. I have been like a bird that brings every morsel she picks up to her unfledged chicks, however hard it goes with her. I have spent many a sleepless night and fought through many a bloody day against men who, like us, are fighting for their womenfolk. I have captured 12 towns from the sea, besides 11 that I took by land in the deep-soiled realm of Troy. From each I got a splendid haul of loot, the whole of which I brought back every time and gave to my lord Agamemnon, son of Atreus, who had stayed behind by the ships, and who, when I handed it over, gave a little of it out in bits, but kept the lion's share. What he did give to the princes and kings in recognition of their rank is safe in their possession, and I am the only one he has robbed. It is not as though he has no wife. He has one, of his own choice. Let him sleep with her and be content. No, Odysseus, he must look to you and the other kings if he wants to save the ships from going up in flames. He has already done marvelous without me. He has built a wall, I see, and dug a trench along it, a fine, broad trench, complete with palisade. But even so he cannot keep the murderous Hector out. Why, in the days when I took the field with the Achaeans, nothing would have induced Hector to throw his men into battle at any distance from the city walls. He came no further than the Scaean gate and the oak tree, where he took me on alone one day, and was lucky to get home alive. But things have changed. And now I do not choose to fight with my lord Hector. So tomorrow I am going to sacrifice to Zeus and all the other gods, then lade and launch my ships. The very first thing in the morning, if you have the curiosity to look, you will see them breasting the Hellespont, where the fishes play, and my men inside them straining at the oar. And in 3 days, given a good crossing by the great sea god, I should set foot on the deep soil of Thea. I left a rich home there when I had the misfortune to come here, and now I shall enrich it further by what I bring back, the gold, the red copper, the girdled women, and the grey iron that fell to me by lot. Everything, in fact, but the prize of honor that was given me and insultingly withdrawn by one and the same man, His Majesty King Agamemnon, son of Atreus. Tell him all I say, and tell him in public, so that the rest may frown on any further efforts he may make to overreach a Danaan prince, unconscionable schemer that he always is. And yet he would not dare to look me in the eye, for all his impudence. No, I will help him neither by my advice nor in the field. He has broken faith with me and played me false. Never again shall I be taken in by what he says. So much for him. Let him go quietly to perdition. Zeus in his wisdom has already addled his brains. As for his gifts, I like them just as little as I like the man himself. Not if he offered me 10 times or 20 times as much as he possesses or could raise elsewhere. All the revenues of Orchomenus or of Thebes, Egyptian Thebes, where the houses are stuffed with treasure, and through every one of 100 gates 200 warriors sally out with their chariot and horses. Not if his gifts were as many as the grains of sand or particles of dust would Agamemnon win me over. First, he must pay me in kind for the bitter humiliation I endured. Again, I will not have any daughter of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, for my wife. She could be lovely as golden Aphrodite and skillful as Athena of the flashing eyes, and yet I would not marry her. He can choose some other Achaean, someone more royal than me, on a level with himself. If the gods allow me to get safely home, Peleus will need no help in finding me a wife. Up and down Hellas and Phthia there are plenty of Achaean girls, daughters of the noblemen, in command of the forts. I have only to choose one and make her my own. There were often times at home when I had no higher ambition than to marry some suitable girl of my own station and enjoy the fortune that my old father Peleus had made. For life, as I see it, is not to be set off either against the fabled wealth of splendid Ilium in the peaceful days before the Achaeans came, or against all the treasure that is piled up in rocky Pytho behind the marble threshold of the archer king Apollo. Cattle and sturdy sheep can be had for the taking, and tripods and chestnut horses can be bought. But you cannot steal or buy back a man's life when once the breath has left his lips. My divine mother, Thetis of the silver feet, says that destiny has left 2 courses open to me on my journey to the grave. If I stay here and play my part in the siege of Troy, there is no homecoming for me, though I shall win undying fame. But if I go home to my own country, my good name will be lost, though I shall have long life, and shall be spared an early death. One more point. I recommend all the rest of you to sail home too, for you will never reach your goal in the steep streets of Ilium. All-seeing Zeus has stretched out a loving hand above the city, and its people have taken heart. So leave me now, and report to the Achaean lords in open council, as you seniors have the right to do. They must think out some better way of saving the ships and all the troops beside them, now that these overtures to me have met with blank refusal. But Phoenix can stay here and spend the night with us. Then he could embark for home with me in the morning. That is to say, if he wants to. There will be no compulsion. Achilles had finished. They were stunned by the downrightness of his refusal, and a long silence ensued, which the old archer Phoenix was the first to break. He was in such terror for the Achaean ships that he burst into tears. "My noble lord, Achilles," he said, "if you really think of sailing home and are so obsessed by anger that you refuse to save the gallant ships from going up in flames, what is to become of me without you, my dear child, and how could I possibly stay here alone? Did not the old charioteer Peleus make you and make me your guardian when he sent you off from Thea to join Agamemnon? You were a mere lad, with no experience of the hazards of war, nor of debate, where people make their mark. It was to teach you all these things, to make a speaker of you and a man of action, that he sent me with you, and I could not bring myself to let you go, dear child, and stay behind, not if God himself undertook to strip of me of my tears and turn me into the sturdy youngster I was when I left Hellas, the land of lovely women. I ran away because of a quarrel with my father, Amintenor, son of Ormenus, and the reasons why we were at daggers drawn was this. He was making love to a beautiful courtesan and was neglecting his wife, my mother, who kept entreating me to turn the woman's heart against the old man by forestalling him and spending a night in her arms. I consented and did so. My father knew at once and was solemn imprecations called on the avenging Furies to see to it that he should never have to take a son of mine on his lap. And as time showed, his curses were fulfilled by the gods, by Zeus of the underworld, and by August Persephone. I was so enraged that my first instinct was to put my father to the sword. But one of the immortals restrained me. He made me think of public opinion, of the obloquy I should incur. and the horror of being called a parricide by my compatriots. Yet I could not bear the prospect of hanging about any longer in my angry father's house. Of course, the friends and kinsmen who had rallied round me were most importunate in their efforts to make me stay at home. Fat sheep and shambling cattle with crooked horns were slaughtered without end. Many a fine fat hog was stretched across the flames to have his bristles singed, and many a jar of the old man's mellow wine was drunk. For 9 nights they camped beside me, taking it in turn to go on guard and keeping 2 fires burning, one under the colonnade of the walled yard, and the other in the forecourt outside the door of the sleeping quarters. But on the 10th day, which was pitch dark, I burst open the stout doors of my bedroom and escaped. I found it easy to climb the courtyard wall, and not one of the men on guard or the maidservants saw me. Then I fled in earnest right across Hellas and its spreading lawns to deep-soiled Thea, mother of sleep, where I presented myself to Peleus, the king. He took me to his heart and loved me as a father loves only a son. The cherished heir to a great estate. He made me a rich man by giving me a populous district to rule, and I settled down on the borders of Thea as king of the Dolopes. Since then, my worshipful Achilles, all my loving devotion has gone to make you what you are. Do you remember how you would refuse to go out to dinner or touch your food at home with anyone but me? How I always had to take you on my knees and pamper you by cutting tidbits for you from my meat and holding my cup to your lips? You often soaked the front of my tunic with the wine that dribbled from your clumsy little mouth. Yes, I went through a great deal for you and worked hard. I felt that since heaven was not going to send me a boy of my own, I had better make you my son, most worshipful Achilles, so that you could save me some day from a miserable end. Conquer your pride, Achilles. You have no right to be so stubborn. The very gods, for all their greater excellence and majesty and power, are capable of being swayed. Even they are turned from their course by sacrifice and humble prayers, libations and burnt offerings, when the miscreant and sinner bend the knee to them in supplication. Do you not know that prayers are daughters of Almighty Zeus? They are wrinkled creatures with a halting gait and downcast eyes, who make it their business to follow sin about. But sin is strong and quick enough to leave them all behind. Stealing a march on them, she roams the world and brings mankind to grief. They come after and put the trouble right. The man who receives these daughters of Zeus with humility when they approach him is greatly blessed by them and has his own petitions granted. But when a man hardens his heart and rebuffs them, they go and pray to Zeus, the son of Cronos, that he may himself be overtaken by sin and punished through his fall. This applies to you, Achilles. You must give their due to the daughters of Zeus by letting them placate you, as they do all noble-hearted men. If my lord Agamemnon has not made you a generous offer, with the promise of more to come, but has persisted in his rancor, I should be the last person to bid you cast your anger to the winds and help the Argives, however great their deed. But as it is, he is not only offering you a great deal now, but has pledged himself to future liberality, besides choosing you as ambassadors to plead his cause, the most distinguished men in the whole army, who are your own best friends among the Argives. Their pleas, their pilgrimage here, are things that you must not dismiss as trifles, though nobody can blame you for the resentment you have felt till now. We have heard many comparable tales of noblemen in old times who had worked themselves up into a passion, yet proved amenable to gifts and yielded to persuasion. Looking back a good many years, I can remember a case myself. We are all friends here, and I will tell you the story. The Curetes were fighting the warlike Aetolians at the city of Calydon. Losses were heavy on both sides. The Aetolians were defending their lovely town of Calydon, and the Curetes doing all they could to sack it. The trouble had started when Artemis of the Golden Throne took offense and let a monster loose on Calydon because King Oeneus had failed to make her any harvest offering on the sacred hill in his estate. All the other gods enjoyed rich sacrifices. It was only his daughter of Almighty Zeus, to whom he offered nothing. Perhaps he forgot her. Perhaps he counted wrong. In either case, he made a false mistake. For in her wrath, the Lady of the Bow sent him a creature of the gods, a ravenous wild boar with flashing tusks, who settled down to ravage the royal lands. He strewed the ground with all the tall fruits he brought tumbling down, rooting them up with the blossom on the twigs. But at last Oeneus' son Meleager killed him. He had to raise a force of huntsmen and hounds from many cities to do this, for the beast was far too powerful to be dealt with by a handful, and brought a number of them to a wretched end. And even then, Artemis started a battle royal over the carcass, setting the Curetes and the proud Aetolians to each other's throats for his head and shaggy hide. In the war that ensued, so long as the redoubtable Meleager played his part, things went badly for the Curetes, who were unable to sit down and besiege the city for all their numbers. But many a sensible man is at times overmastered by passion, and that is what happened to Meleager now. Enraged with Althea, his mother, he lay at home idle with his wife, the lovely Cleopatra, daughter of Marpessa of the slim ankles, herself the daughter of Oeneus. Cleopatra's father, Idas, had in his time been the strongest man on earth, and had actually faced Lord Phoebus Apollo with his bow for the sake of Marpessa, this lady with the lovely ankles. And later, in their home. Cleopatra's parents had given her the nickname Alcyone in memory of her mother's life as a kingfisher and the plaintive calls she uttered when the archer god Apollo carried her off. Well, Meleager took to his bed, lay there with Cleopatra, and nursed her soul-destroying wrath. It was his mother's curses that had embittered him. He had killed her brother, and she in her grief had importuned the gods to kill her son, falling on her knees, deluging her lap with tears, and beating the bountiful earth with her fists, as she called on Hades and august Persephone, and the Fury that walks in the dark and has inexorable thoughts heard her from Erebus. Long before the Curetes were storming at the city gates, one could hear them battering the walls. And now the Aetolian elders tried to induce Meleager to come out and save the town. They sent him a deputation of the leading priests and promised him a liberal donation. They told him he could choose an estate of 50 acres for his own use, half vineland and half open plowed land, to be carved out of the richest part of the lovely Caledonian plain. The old charioteer, Oenus, added his prayers to theirs. He stood on the threshold of Meleager's lofty bedrooms and shook the solid wooden doors, begging and beseeching his son. His sisters and his lady mother earnestly adjured him too, though they only made him still more obstinate. And so did his comrades in arms, the dearest and most loyal friends he had. But he resisted all their entreaties till the very last moment, when the Curetes had scaled the walls and were firing the great city, and the missiles were hailing down on his very room. At that point, Meleager's lovely wife approached him in tears. She pictured all the miseries that people suffer when their town is captured, the slaughter of the men, the city laid in dust and ashes by the flames, the alien enemy carrying off the children and the women in their girdled gowns. Her sad recital touched his heart, and he came out and donned his gleaming armor. Thus he saved the Aetolians from disaster at the dictates of his own conscience. And that brings so. They gave him none of the splendid gifts they had offered. He saved them, but got nothing for it. My friend, do not think as he did, or feel inspired to follow his example. When the ships are already on fire, it will be harder than ever to save them. No, come while the gifts are still to be had, and the Achaeans will treat you like a god. If you come in and risk your life in battle with no such inducement, they will not think nearly so well of you, even though you turn defeat into victory. Phoenix had done, and now Achilles, the great runner, spoke again. My lord Phoenix, he said, my dear old friend, I have no use for the Achaeans' good opinion. I am content with the approbation of Zeus, which will keep me by my beaked ships as long as breath remains in my body and I can use my limbs. What is more, I wish you to know that I object to your currying favor with my lord Agamemnon by this attempt to upset me with a display of maudlin emotion. Be careful how you give that man your heart, or you may change my love for you to hate. The right thing for you to do is to cross the man who crosses me. I have decided, and all these men shall tell him so. I had rather give you half my kingdom than relent. Meanwhile, stay here yourself. There's a comfortable bed for you to sleep on, and at daybreak we will decide whether to go home or not. As he finished, Achilles quietly signaled to Patroclus with a movement of his eyebrows to make the bed for Phoenix, so that the others might think of getting on their way as soon as possible. It was Aias, the royal son of Telamon, who made the first move. Turning to Laertes' son, he said, "My lord Odysseus of the nimble wits, let us go, for it seems to me that our mission is doomed to failure, this time at any rate. Bad as the news is, we must at once report it to the Danaans, who are no doubt sitting up and awaiting us. But I cannot help reflecting on the combination of rancor and arrogance that Achilles has displayed. Ruthlessness, too, not a thought for the affection of his comrades who made him the idol of our camp. The inhumanity of it. After all, even in cases of murder, it is quite common for a man to accept blood money for a brother or maybe a son. The killer does not even have to leave the country if he pays up to the next of kin, whose pride and injured feelings are appeased by the indemnity. But you, Achilles, God knows why, have worked yourself up into this implacable fury over a girl, a single girl. And here we are, offering you 7 of the very best, and a great deal more into the bargain. Be a little more forbearing, and remember your obligations as our host. We are under your roof. We were picked from the whole Danaan army, and we wish for nothing better than to remain your closest and dearest friends of all the Achaeans that are here. Your Highness, Aias, royal son of Telamon, Achilles the great runner answered, there is much in what you say, but my blood boils when I think of what happened and the vile way in which Atrides treated me in public, like some disreputable outcast. Go now and report my decision. I will not think again of bloodshed and war until Prince Hector, son of the wise Priam, reaches the huts and ships of the Myrmidons, killing Argives as he comes, and destroys the fleet by fire. I have a notion that, however furious his attack may be, Hector will be brought up short, here by my own hut and my own black ship. When Achilles finished, his visitors, each taking up a 2-handled cup and offering a libation, made their way back along the line of ships, with Odysseus at their head. Patroclus told his men and the maidservants quickly to make a comfortable bed for Phoenix. When the woman had carried out his orders and spread fleeces and a rug and a sheet of fine linen on the bedstead, the old man lay down on it and waited there for the blessed light of dawn. Achilles himself slept in a corner of his well-built wooden hut, with the woman he had brought from Lesbos at his side, the daughter of Phorbas, Diomede of the lovely cheeks. Patroclus slept in the corner opposite. He too had a companion, Iphis of the girdled robe, whom the noble Achilles had given him when he captured the high fortress of Scyros, the city of Aeneas. The envoys reached Agamemnon's hut, and were no sooner inside it than the Achaean lords leapt to their feet and were pledging them on every side with golden cups and bombarding them with questions. King Agamemnon was the most urgent of all. "Illustrious Odysseus, flower of Achaean chivalry," he said, "tell me at once, will he save the ships from being burnt, or is it that proud spirit, still implacable?" The steadfast, excellent Odysseus made his report. "Your Majesty, Agamemnon, son of Atreus, king of men, the man has no intention of relenting. In fact, he is more virulent than ever. He repudiates you and your gifts. He says you can find out for yourself, with your friend's assistance, how to save the ships and men. Meanwhile, he threatens to drag his own curved ships into the sea at dawn, and he said he advised all the rest of us as well to sail for home. You will never reach your goal, he said. In the steep streets of Ilium, all-seeing Zeus has stretched out a loving hand above that city, and its people have taken heart. Those were his words. Of my fellow envoys, Aias and the two heralds, both reliable men, are here to bear it out. But the old man Phoenix is sleeping there. Achilles pressed him to stay, so that he could embark with him for home in the morning if he wished to, though he said he would not force him. Not a word was said when Odysseus had done. His message, and the blunt way in which it was delivered, left the Achaean lords aghast, and a long and a gloomy silence followed, which was not broken till at last Diomedes of the loud war cry ventured to speak. Your Majesty, he said, Agamemnon, son of Atreus, king of men, it is 1,000 pities that you brought yourself to plead with my lord Achilles and make him such a princely offer. He is a proud man at the best of times, and now you have given him an even better conceit to himself. Well, we must let him be. Whether he sails or stays, he'll fight again, when his own conscience speaks and the spirit moves him. And now I hope you will all follow my lead. For the moment I go to bed. You have enjoyed the food and wine that a man needs to keep up his strength and courage. But in the first fair light of dawn, you, sir, must take action. Deploy your infantry and horse in front of the ships and inspire them by your word of command, as well as by fighting in the front line yourself. The kings all expressed their approval of this advice from Diomedes of the loud war cry. They made their libations and retired to their several huts, where they lay down and enjoyed the boon of sleep.